Hi everyone, my name is Gilles Retsin. I run Gilles Retsin Architecture based in London. I would like to thank first and foremost the Seoul Biennale of Architecture and Urbanism for inviting me to participate and share my work with you here in South Korea and abroad. The context of architecture today is challenging. It's defined by a manifold of global crises. Climate emergency, the global housing crisis, the impact of increased automation, and also the social and political questions of the digital economy. My work seeks to take a position on how we think about digital technologies in this specific context. I explore how we can think about architectural parts as a way to access discussions about logistics, automation, and the very core of architecture itself. Where do these parts come from? Who produces them? What is their carbon impact? What labor went into them? What is their life cycle? How do they come together? And how do they come apart again? It's a radical attempt to fundamentally question how we build today. My work seeks to start again by redefining the very materials and parts we build with. Rather than building with thousands of different parts and components that have become commonplace today, my work begins by redefining the very parts it consists of. These building blocks are thought through processes of extreme efficiency, logistics, and digital automation. They are blunt and simple, pixel-like blocks without a specific function and meaning. While this is a process of logistics, automation, and efficiency, I understand architecture itself to play a crucial role here to generate beauty, meaning, and experience that transcends those parts. For example, this project in the forest in Belgium is made just from repeating elements, but its expression can never be limited just to the elements. This is therefore a new kind of assembly. There's no hierarchy, such as in classical part-to-whole relations or in historic buildings, but it also is very different from a modernist assembly, or what we would associate it today with modular architecture. It's a complex repetition which produces more than just the sum of the parts. This is another building based on the same parts we saw before, this time for a museum in Vienna. There's a kind of interrogation between the parts themselves and architectural elements, archetypes almost, we are all familiar with. The slab, the column, etc. Yet there are no actual slabs or columns. Everything can only be read through the parts themselves. This is the same in this project, also in Belgium, that plays with these ideas. This is an assembly just of the same repeating parts, an L-shaped element and a straight one. These parts are composed of timber sheet materials and are hollow on the inside. It's vaguely familiar and very new at the same time. Resulting architecture is strangely enough continuous, similar to a cave or a primitive hut, a continuous operation of the same material throughout, constructing everything. There is no such thing as floor plates, walls. There are no elements we're truly familiar with. The parts only obtain a function or meaning after their assembly. I further explored this with this installation at the Royal Academy of Arts in London, which is a fragment of the house I showed before. We built these parts from simple standard timber sheets, which were CNC cut and then assembled into these blocks, which you can see here in one of the museum halls before they were assembled. While this was really an exercise in the technical feasibility of the construction method, it was also a chance to understand what these kinds of spaces produce in terms of experience, what it means on an architectural level. It's a strangely continuous space, organic, while at the same time clearly assembled. The installation contrasts with the ceiling of the exhibition space, which produces ornament on a small scale with the plaster moldings. The installation, on the other hand, produces ornament and difference through the organization of the parts themselves. There is no cladding, nothing can be stripped away. Just as how the first primitive dwellings were constructed from found materials, huts assembled from tree trunks or stones, this fully automated discrete architecture is also directly extracted from the forest. Its extremely short production chain strips architecture from its layers of history, right down to its raw and primordial monolithic state. We had a chance to apply this method for a small project in Belgium, a house extension which consists of a simple roof held up by 3 columns. The roof was constructed from similar prefabricated elements, which were assembled in just a few days. Here you see the beauty of these elements being lifted in the air before assembly, already kind of sculptural in their own right. These are some images then of the building site. And for me, it's quite important to show that it's kind of, you could say, excessive beauty is actually affordable. That it could be used for such a small and humble project, that it's not something that can only be used for a large museum project. It's a kind of a beauty that is not expensive and that wants to be distributed. At the same time, there is again the contrast between the simple and familiar overall architecture. An actually quite boring roof with columns, which becomes something extraordinary only through the parts it's built with. Again, the contrast between the familiar, primordial idea of the roof with the column and the strangeness of the parts. It has something ancient about it and something novel at the same time. It also has a similar contrast between weight and volume. While the parts are large volumes, they're ultimately hollow and lightweight. This project continues an interest in housing, which is where these discrete automated systems potentially could have the most impact. This earlier project here for an installation at the Tallinn Architecture Biennale in Estonia also demonstrates this as a fragment of a larger housing block. That housing block could perhaps be something like this. This is a project for a 200-meter long housing scheme in London. It consists only of repeating timber building blocks, which can be assembled in a different position in every instance. This results then in a building that is now merely compiled from repeating timber elements, a building as a granulate. Every instance of the building can be different, while this difference doesn't come at an extra cost. Nothing needs to be customized or crafted. It's merely an informational instruction to deposit an element in another position. The building therefore becomes granular and again can be designed down to the grain. My interest is in applying this on a larger scale, beyond to small installations and house projects. What you see here is a project for a concert hall in Nuremberg, together with German architect Stefan Marcus Albrecht. The parts are extremely large, cross-laminated timber elements. Here you see all the elements needed to build the concert hall laid out flat. This is an entire concert hall broken down into its parts. This is the algorithmic logic behind the assembly. It's a simple V-shaped element that is aggregated together and then translated into a pure stack of CLT sheets. The resulting building seems like a box, but it is not a box. It's merely an assembly of the same repeating parts over and over again. It has almost nothing in common with any existing building. There are actually no columns or floor slabs as such, again, just the repeating parts. And as in the previous work, while it is all based on rectilinear elements, it is strangely organic and continuous. It's the same operation that defines everything around us. What is most radical actually about this building is that 95% of it is digitally produced, straight out of the forest, cut by a CNC machine. Just the facade, the last few centimeters of the building's perimeter are done according to the rules of existing building practices. I applied the same method to this other competition entry for the National Museum of Finland in Helsinki. The simple A-frame-like element, again cut from cross-laminated timber. That element then defines a primitive barn, a long black roof. At the same time, again, this roof has nothing in common with a traditional roof. It is actually, again, fundamentally different. While timber is an increasingly popular construction material in Europe and North America, the much more challenging climate of East Asia, combined with fast urbanization, has resulted in a slower adoption. Therefore, for the Biennale, I wanted to work around timber manufacturing and housing. My research for the Biennale explores the possibility for a discrete timber building platform for medium-scale housing on challenging, dense inner-city plots in Seoul. In close collaboration with local timber manufacturers, the research develops a prototypical platform for the production of discrete timber housing. This research is then tested on two 1:5 models of the full house, using the same construction techniques as the 1:1 scale would employ. The model is based on the simplest possible building box. These boxes are stringed together with steel cables kept under tension. This results in a kind of primordial assembly between a model, a toy, and a building. I like the extreme bluntness in this model. It looks almost banal, yet again, nothing about it is known. The installation then consists of two of these extremely large architectural, almost sculptural models. At the same time, there are also technical prototypes, as the way that these will be built in reality would be exactly the same. The installation ultimately aims to demonstrate how digital technologies allow us to again think creatively and provocatively about housing. So I'll leave you with this. Thank you so much.